No one knew what lay beyond the edges of our solar system. For centuries, humanity had stared at the stars, dreaming of what lay hidden in the darkness. We had always assumed that when we found something extraordinary, it would be alien in nature, something beyond our understanding. We were wrong. The year was 2378 when the USS Vanguard, a deep space exploration vessel, made history. While charting an uninhabited star system on the outer edges of the Milky Way, its long-range sensors detected something that shouldn't have been there. Not just a ship, not even a fleet. What it found were worlds, massive starships, each the size of a small planet, drifting silently in the void. Their surfaces were smooth and dark, absorbing all light, as if they had been there for thousands, maybe millions of years. They weren't just built, they were engineered on a level beyond anything humanity had ever seen. And yet, when we scanned them, something impossible was revealed. They weren't alien, they were human. The moment the discovery was made public, the galaxy erupted into chaos. Humanity was still a young species, only recently having earned its place in the interstellar community. The older, more established empires, the Varn Dominion, the Zethian Confederacy, and the mighty Jorvek Imperium, had tolerated humanity's rise, but only just. We were ambitious, reckless, and resourceful, but we were still considered primitive. Yet here we were, standing before an impossible truth. These ships, these enormous relics, bore the unmistakable marks of human design. Symbols, writing, and technology all pointed to an origin that should have been impossible. The galaxy watched in awe, and then in fear. Because the real question wasn't just who had built these ships, it was why they had been abandoned, and what had forced them to be left behind. The diplomatic channels between Earth and the galactic powers became flooded with demands, threats, and desperate pleas for answers. The Jorvek Imperium, the oldest and most dominant species in the known galaxy, immediately deployed their own fleets to investigate, though they were careful to avoid direct confrontation with humanity. But the truth was, we didn't know anything either. The USS Vanguard and several other human ships formed an expeditionary task force, approaching the nearest of the planet-sized vessels with caution. The sheer scale of it was overwhelming. Over 12,000 kilometers in diameter, larger than Earth's moon. Yet it wasn't a natural formation. Its hull was composed of advanced alloys, some of which didn't match any known human technology, while others looked eerily familiar, like something out of humanity's long-forgotten past. As the task force drew closer, a transmission burst through the void. A voice. It was human. Identify. The single word sent shivers down every crew member's spine. The voice was deep, mechanical, but unmistakably human. It spoke in an ancient form of English, so old that AI translators had to reconstruct parts of it. Captain Elias Wren of the Vanguard took a breath before responding. "This is the USS Vanguard of the Terran Federation. We are human. Who are you?" Silence followed. Then, the ship came to life. Lights flickered across its massive hull, ancient systems booting up as if roused from an eternal sleep. Panels along its surface peeled back, revealing weapons of unfathomable power. Mass drivers the size of skyscrapers, energy cannons capable of wiping out entire fleets. The sensors aboard the Vanguard went berserk. Whatever this thing was, its firepower alone outclassed every known military force in the galaxy. And yet, it did not fire. Instead, the voice returned. "Welcome home." The word sent a ripple through humanity's ranks. What did it mean? Had these ships belonged to an ancient human civilization that predates all recorded history? If so, where did they go? And more importantly, Why had they built warships of this magnitude? The galactic community was watching, waiting. Some were eager to see humanity rise, others were terrified of what this discovery meant. But one thing was certain. Something in our past had been far greater than we ever imagined. And whatever had built these ships might still be out there. As the enormous starship continued to awaken, the human task force remained on high alert. Every scan, every readout screamed the same terrifying truth. This wasn't just an old relic. It was operational. Fully armed, fully powered, and if the readings were correct, manned. Or at least something was inside. Captain Wren swallowed hard. USS Vanguard to Terran Command. The structure is responding. It recognizes us. Admiral Sarah Kensington's voice crackled over the comms. Understood, Vanguard. Proceed with extreme caution. You are authorized to establish contact, but do not provoke a response. The crew of the Vanguard exchanged uneasy glances. They were floating before something that defied all logic. Human technology that shouldn't exist, on a scale that shattered every assumption about Earth's history. And then, another message came through. Enter. The structure began to move. A massive section of the hull peeled back, revealing a hangar so vast that the Vanguard, a kilometer-long ship, could have fit inside 100 times over. It wasn't just a docking bay. It was a city. Towers of unknown function rose from the floor, walkways crisscrossed the air, and mechanical systems flickered with renewed energy. For a long moment, no one spoke. Lieutenant Annika Solis, the ship's sensor officer, was the first to break the silence. Captain, whatever is in there, it's inviting us in. Captain Wren clenched his jaw. Every instinct told him that stepping inside was a risk, but they had come too far to turn back. Helm, take us in. The Vanguard slowly moved forward, its thrusters guiding it into the abyss of the ancient ship's interior. The moment they crossed the threshold, the hangar doors sealed shut behind them. And then, gravity shifted. The entire ship locked into place, artificial gravity suddenly increasing, forcing everyone on board to brace themselves. The Vanguard was being held, integrated into the massive structure as if it were meant to be there. Then the voice returned. You have returned, accessing archives. A deep hum resonated through the colossal vessel, and a holographic display flared to life in front of the Vanguard's bridge. It showed something terrifying. A war. Ancient human ships, thousands of them, clashing against monstrous alien behemoths. The enemy was unlike anything recorded in any known database. Towering obsidian leviathans, their ships shaped like nightmare constructs, moving in perfect, eerie unison. The battle was brutal. Human warships fought like demons, wielding weapons that far surpassed modern technology. Planet-sized vessels, like the one they were inside, led the charge, unleashing destruction so vast it made the wars of today look like playground skirmishes. But then something changed. The human fleet began retreating, not in panic but in precision. Entire battalions fell back in coordinated movements, as if executing a pre-planned strategy. And then, the archive cut out. The voice returned. Error. Data corrupted. Initiating recovery. Silence fell over the bridge. The implications were staggering. There had been a war humanity fought, not as underdogs, not as the struggling newcomers of the galaxy, but as a civilization powerful enough to build planet-sized warships. And yet, they had disappeared. Captain Wren exhaled slowly. What the hell happened to us? And more importantly, was the enemy they had fought still out there? The silence on the bridge of the Vanguard was deafening. Everyone had the same thought running through their heads. If ancient humanity had been powerful enough to build ships like these, where did they go? And what had they been fighting? Lieutenant Solus broke the silence first. "Captain, if we were this advanced once, why did we fall? Why isn't there any record of this?" Captain Wren didn't have an answer. "We'll find out soon enough." He turned back to the hologram. "Computer, continue data recovery." The deep hum of the ancient ship intensified, and a new series of images flashed across the display. This time it wasn't warships. It was stars. The crew watched in stunned horror as one by one the stars were snuffed out. Not explosions, not supernovas, just darkness, like something had reached into the cosmos and erased them. Lieutenant Commander Rajan, the ship's tactical officer, paled. "Captain, those aren't just random stars. He swallowed. "They're colonized systems." Solus gasped. "Are you saying—" "I'm saying," Rajan interrupted grimly, "that whatever humanity was fighting didn't just attack our fleets. They erased entire civilizations. Whole star systems just disappeared." Wren's blood ran cold. If that was true, then this war hadn't been a simple conflict. It had been an extermination, and humanity had lost. The computer's voice returned. "Archival recovery at 47%. Warning, security lock active. Requires human command override." Wren hesitated. Whoever had built this ship had put these locks in place for a reason. Did he really want to open them? Before he could decide, a new alert blared through the bridge. "Multiple ships approaching. Identifying. Non-human high threat detected." The main screen shifted, showing external sensor data. The Jorvik Imperium had arrived. A fleet of 30 warships, all trained on the massive structure. The Jorvik had been the first empire to react to humanity's discovery, and now they had come to take it. The lead Jorvik ship hailed them. The screen flickered to reveal an armored figure, Overlord Serac, one of the most feared military leaders in the galaxy. His red eyes burned with interest, but his voice was cold and calculated. "Terrans, you stand inside a relic that is beyond your understanding. By interstellar decree, we claim this structure in the name of the Imperium." Wren folded his arms. "Overlord Serac, this ship is human." Serac smirked. "And yet it is not yours. You are a primitive offshoot of something far greater. If anything, you are unworthy of its legacy." Wren's fists clenched. "We didn't come here to surrender our history." Serac's expression darkened. "You misunderstand, Captain. This is not a request." The Jorvik ships began to move, positioning themselves into a formation that screamed hostile intent. And that's when the ancient ship spoke again. "Warning. External threat detected. Defensive protocols engaged." The massive vessel awoke. For the first time in what might have been millennia, its weapon systems activated. Gigantic energy cannons along its surface began humming with terrifying power. Entire sections of the ship shifted, revealing turrets the size of cities. The Vanguard's sensors couldn't even comprehend the energy levels being generated. The Jorvik fleet halted immediately. Even they weren't stupid enough to fire first. Serac's confidence wavered. What are you doing?" Wren smiled grimly. "It's not us." The ancient ship's voice rang out once more, cold and unwavering. "Final war protocols ready, awaiting human command override." The galaxy had always seen humanity as the reckless newcomers, the scavengers, the underdogs. But now, they were about to witness something terrifying. The return of a force they never even knew existed. And the question remained. If this ship was only one of many, how much more was still out there? The bridge of the Vanguard was bathed in a deep red glow as the ancient ship's war protocols fully activated. Warning indicators flashed across the control panels. This wasn't a bluff. This thing was ready to annihilate the Jorvik fleet. Outside, The Jorvek warships scrambled to adjust their formation, their energy shields flaring to life. Overlord Sirach's expression twisted into something between fury and fear. "Terran!" he spat. "Stand down! You cannot control this weapon. If you activate it, you risk a war with the entire galaxy." Captain Wren's heart pounded. He wasn't about to let the Jorvek take this ship, but he also didn't know what the hell he was dealing with. This wasn't just an old relic. It was a doomsday weapon left behind by an ancient version of humanity. And now it was looking at him to make the call. He turned to Lieutenant Solis. "Can we override it?" She shook her head. "Not without a command authorization. And considering this thing predates all of our known history, I doubt any of our codes will work." Sirach's voice turned sharp. "This ship belongs to the Imperium now. If you attempt to resist..." Warning, hostile entity identified. The voice of the ship cut him off. Sirach barely had time to react before the ancient warship fired. A single pulse of energy erupted from its surface, a gravity shockwave cannon. The invisible force ripped through space and hit the Jorvek fleet with devastating precision. It wasn't a direct attack, it was a warning shot. But even that was terrifying. The shockwave crushed the Jorvek flagship's shields in an instant, sending the vessel spiraling backward as its systems overloaded. Several other ships in the fleet lost control, spinning wildly, their crews scrambling to regain power. Sirach's image flickered as his ship was thrown backward. The fear in his eyes was unmistakable. This is impossible." Wren took a slow breath. "Number, it's just history repeating itself." He turned back to the ancient ship's control panel. If the Vanguard had any chance of surviving this, they needed control. Fast. "Computer," Wren said, stepping forward. "Identify previous command structure." The ship hesitated. Then, new voices emerged. A fragmented, ancient log. "This is Fleetmaster Orion Vallis of the Terran Dominion. We are executing final protocols. All remaining warships are to retreat to the designated sanctuary zones. The enemy is too powerful. We cannot hold them back any longer." The log crackled with distortion. Another voice, female this time, responded. "We cannot abandon the fleet. If the core ships do not hold the line, we risk..." Static. Then, "They are coming. We have to activate the locks. This war cannot follow us to the next cycle." The transmission cut off. The room was dead silent. "Next cycle?" Rajan whispered. "What the hell does that mean?" Solis's fingers danced over the controls. "Captain, I think..." She hesitated, looking pale. "I think they sealed their own technology, locked it away, on purpose." Wren's stomach tightened. But why? Before she could answer, a new alert appeared on the main display. "Long-range detection anomaly detected. Unknown signature matches archived hostile entity." A chill ran through the room. Something was out there. Not just the Jorvek fleet, not just scavengers, something else. Something that made the original humans lock away their greatest weapons and flee. Sirach's fleet was regrouping, but the Overlord was no longer barking orders. He, too, had seen the alert. And for the first time in history, a human and an alien warlord felt the same fear. The past wasn't just a mystery, it was a warning. And now, the thing humanity had once fought was stirring again. A heavy silence fell over the bridge of the Vanguard. No one spoke. No one dared to. Captain Wren stared at the display, his fingers tightening around the edges of the console. The words on the screen burned into his mind. "Anomaly detected. Unknown signature matches archived hostile entity." Something was coming. Something humanity had fought before. Rajan's voice was barely above a whisper. "Sir, if the Jorvek fleet saw this too, they know what it means." Wren's gaze flicked to the external feed. He expected the Imperium fleet to seize the opportunity, to press their advantage while humanity was still at a loss. But they didn't. Instead, the Jorvik ships were moving, falling back. Overlord Serac's transmission reappeared, his earlier arrogance replaced with something unfamiliar. Doubt. "Terran," he said slowly, his voice measured. "Do you understand what you found?" Ren exhaled. "Not enough." Serac's red eyes narrowed. "That signature, it should not exist, not anymore." Ren hesitated. "You've seen it before." A grim pause. "Not personally. But our archives contain ancient records, stories of a time before the Imperium, when even the greatest civilizations of the old galaxy vanished." Serac's jaw tightened. "My ancestors did not believe the tales. They assumed it was a myth." The room on Vanguard was ice cold. Solus murmured, "What kind of enemy makes entire empires disappear?" Serac's voice dropped lower. "The kind that does not wage war. It ends them." The Vanguard's computer interrupted with another alert. "Signature confirmed. Classification. Exterminus protocols. Entity identified. The Veil." Ren felt the air leave his lungs. The Veil? The name meant nothing to humanity. It wasn't in any of Earth's historical records. But for some reason, when the ancient ship spoke the name, a deep, primal dread settled over the crew. Rajan's face was pale. "Sir, I'm detecting movement near the anomaly." Ren turned back to the main screen, his heart hammering. And then, they saw it, a vast, unnatural shadow against the stars. Not a ship, not a fleet, something else. Its form was shifting, warping, as if it wasn't bound by physical laws. Jagged, obsidian-like structures rippled across its surface, pulsing with an eerie, dark energy. And worst of all, it wasn't alone. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, emerging from the void, silent and patient, like predators waiting for their prey to notice them. The Jorvik fleet instantly responded, ships turning to retreat. Serac's voice rang through the comms, his composure shattering. "Terran, listen to me. You must activate that ship. Now!" Ren didn't hesitate. He turned to Solus. "Override the security lock, whatever it takes." She didn't argue. Her hands moved furiously over the console, bypassing barriers, forcing the ancient system into full operational mode. The ship trembled as it accepted her commands, as if it had been waiting for someone to take control. The voice returned. "Final lock overridden. Core systems online." Outside, the Vanguard and the ancient ship were now the only things standing between humanity and extinction. The Veil had returned. And this time, we would be ready. The ancient warship awoke in full. Every system roared to life. The colossal structure trembled as deep within its core, power surged through weapons long dormant. Energy signatures spiked beyond measurable limits. Massive cannons, hidden beneath its surface for untold millennia, unfolded, locking onto the shifting horrors in the distance. The Veil was watching. Captain Ren gritted his teeth, gripping the command console as the ship's AI spoke again. "Systems operational. War protocols engaged. Awaiting command." Solus's voice was shaky. "Sir, this thing's power output is off the charts. Whatever we're sitting on, it wasn't just a warship." Rajan's fingers flew over the sensors. "It's a fortress." He turned, his face pale. "Captain, this thing could wipe out fleets." The Jorvik Imperium ships were already in full retreat. Serac's face appeared once more, but this time his arrogance was gone. "Terran," he said, voice edged with something Ren never expected from an overlord. "Fear." "You do not understand," Serac continued. "The Veil, it does not destroy, it unmakes." Ren clenched his jaw. "Then we make our stand." The Veil moved, No engines, no propulsion system. The entities didn't need them. They slid through space as if reality itself bent to their will. The nearest thing, an obsidian-like mass larger than a dreadnought, unfolded, its surface splitting open like a wound. And inside, there was nothing. A gaping abyss of swirling void, darker than the space around it. It wasn't an engine, it wasn't a weapon, it was consumption. The nearest Jorvik battleship was too slow to retreat. The void expanded, and in an instant the ship was gone. Not destroyed, not vaporized, erased, no wreckage, no debris, no explosion. 1 second it existed, the next it didn't. Rajan swore. Oh my God. Panic rippled through the fleet. Jorvik ships broke formation, pushing their engines to the limit, fleeing before the veil turned its attention towards them. But the ancient warship remained still. It did not retreat. It had faced this enemy before, and now it was ready to finish what it started. Ren's fingers hovered over the control panel. He didn't fully understand this ship's systems, but he didn't need to. This wasn't alien technology. It was ours. This was humanity's legacy. He pressed the command. Fire! A deep, seismic rumble shook the entire vessel. The cannons ignited, and the war that had ended eons ago began again. The ship answered. Not with words, not with warnings, with fire. From its surface erupted a storm of energy, blinding lances of white-hot destruction, each blast carrying the force of a dying star. The darkness of space was swallowed in raw, unrelenting power as the ancient warship did what it was built to do. It fought. The first shot struck the closest veil entity, a massive, shifting, void-like mass. For a fraction of a second, the abyss resisted. Then it collapsed. A ripple of nothingness spread from the impact site, as if the entity had never existed in the first place. Space twisted, folded in on itself, and with a silent howl, the creature was erased. The veil reacted. No sounds, no transmissions, just movement. The remaining entities turned toward the ancient ship, abandoning their slow, creeping approach. They lunged, warping space itself as they closed the distance. Rajan yelled, "Incoming, fast!" Captain Ren didn't flinch. "Fire again!" The warship obeyed. Another blast ripped across the battlefield, slamming into the nearest entity. This time it didn't simply vanish, it fractured. The void-like structure split apart, writhing, twisting as it collapsed inward. The darkness screamed, though there was no sound. And yet, for every veil construct they destroyed, more emerged. Ren's fists clenched. How many were there? Solus was pale. "Sir, these things aren't just attacking, they're adapting." She pointed to the sensors. Ren followed her gaze, and his stomach dropped. The veil were reshaping themselves. Where once they had been shifting, formless masses, now they were solidifying, growing armor-like exoskeletons, warping into sharper, deadlier forms. Some took on the vague silhouettes of ships, mimicking the shapes of vessels they had already consumed. They were learning. Rajan swore. "They're studying our attacks. They're—" Before he could finish, one of the larger veil entities struck. It didn't fire a weapon. It didn't launch an attack in any conventional sense. Instead, it simply expanded. A ripple of sheer void surged outward, aimed directly at the ancient ship. Ren barely had time to react. "Shields!" Too late. The void hit. The ship shuddered. Alarms blared. Panels sparked. The Vanguard's bridge flickered, lights dimming for a brief moment. Every screen flashed the same warning. "Anomaly breach detected." Something alien slithered through the ship's systems, unseen but felt. A whispering presence, curling around the edges of thought, pressing against reality itself. And then, the voice returned. But this time, it wasn't the ship's AI. It was something else, something older, something watching. "You should not be here." The words didn't come through the comms. They didn't vibrate in the air. They manifested. Inside minds, inside thoughts, inside souls. Ren staggered. His breath hitched, a primal biological terror clawing at his chest. He knew, without logic or reason, that he was hearing something wrong. Something that wasn't meant to speak. Rajan grabbed his head. Get it out! Solus screamed. The bridge lights flickered. The Veil weren't just attacking, they were invading. Not just the ship, not just humanity, reality itself. The bridge buckled under the weight of something unseen. The walls seemed to breathe, shifting between solidity and shadow. For a moment, the universe itself felt wrong, like reality had cracked, and something was crawling through. You should not be here. The voice twisted in Ren's mind, a presence pressing against his very thoughts. It wasn't words, it was meaning, raw and unfiltered, poured into his consciousness like liquid dread. He fought it. Clenching his jaw, he forced his thoughts into sharp focus. Vanguard, report! Rajan was shaking, his hands clenched into fists. The ship, systems are flickering, but we're still operational. He turned, his voice strained. Captain, I think it's trying to rewrite us. Solus was pale, hands shaking over the console. Something's inside the ship, not physically, in the code. The Veil, it's infecting our systems. The warship shuddered again. Outside, the Veil creatures had stopped their assault. They no longer needed to attack conventionally. They had found a new way in. They were trying to erase the crew from within. The ship's AI crackled with distortion. Systems compromised. Hostile anomaly detected. The whispering deepened. Ren gritted his teeth as his vision blurred, static crawling at the edges of his mind. He fought to stay present, to stay real. And then a new voice cut through the madness. This is Fleetmaster Orion Vallis. If you're hearing this, then the Veil has returned. The voice was human, not the Veil, not the ship's AI. It was a recording. Solus gasped. It's coming from deep in the warship's archives, something the Veil didn't erase. The recording continued. This ship, this fleet, was built as the final stand of humanity. We fought, we held, but the enemy was never meant to be defeated. A deep breath. A pause. The Veil does not conquer. It does not invade. It removes. It unravels civilizations from existence, erasing every trace they were ever there. Ren's heart pounded. Then how are we still here? The answer came in the next words. Because we ran. Silence. Rajan frowned. What? The Terran Dominion did not win. We escaped. We erased ourselves first. The ship trembled. The recording continued. The final protocols locked our history away, hid us from the Veil's reach. The warships were sealed, buried where even we could not find them. And now, if you are hearing this... A long pause. Then someone has woken us up. The crew froze. The realization hit all at once. Humanity hadn't just forgotten its past. It had been wiped away on purpose. And now? Now the Veil knew we were back. Solus's voice shook. Oh my God. We just told them where we are. And outside the ship, the Veil began to move again. But this time, they weren't attacking. They were calling for reinforcements. The realization sank in like a knife. They hadn't just found an ancient warship. They had set off a beacon. The Veil now knew humanity had returned. The warship's deep-core scanners flickered with frantic alerts. A gravitational disturbance rippled through the void, warping space-time itself. Solus's face was drained of color as she read the data. Captain, they're coming. Ren swallowed hard. How many? She hesitated. Then, voice barely above a whisper. all of them. The screen filled with nightmarish shapes, dark, shifting void beasts, thousands of kilometers wide, emerging from the nothingness between galaxies. They stretched, twisted, unfolding into things that no sane mind should have been able to comprehend. This wasn't a fleet. It was an extinction event, and it was coming for them. Overlord Serac's face flashed on the screen. Even the Jorvek warlord, feared across the galaxy, looked pale. "Terran, listen to me." His voice was urgent. "You do not understand what you've done. No one survives the Veil." Ren exhaled. "So what did your ancestors do?" Serac's eyes burned. "They hid, like yours did, like everyone did." Solus turned sharply. "Then why are you still here?" Serac hesitated. And then, the Warship's AI spoke again. "Survival protocols engaged, activating Sanctuary Command." The entire ship shifted, panels unfolded, energy surged. For the first time in untold millennia, the colossal vessel moved. Rajan's console exploded with new data. "Captain, this ship, it's not just a warship, it's a gate." Ren's blood ran cold. "A what?" Solus's fingers danced across the controls. "The Sanctuary Command. It's not a weapon. It's a wormhole generator." She turned, eyes wide. This ship wasn't built to fight the Veil. It was built to run. The realization was staggering. This wasn't just a warship. It was humanity's escape hatch. And now, after all this time, it was waking up to finish its mission. The Veil felt it. Outside, the entities screeched. Not in sound, but in the very fabric of space itself. They surged forward, desperate to stop what was happening. Too late. The warship activated, and the void split open. A rift in reality tore itself into existence, a wormhole, massive and glowing, its edges crackling with the forgotten power of ancient humanity. The Vanguard's scanners screamed. Rajan's voice was breathless. "That's not just any wormhole!" Ren turned. "What are you saying?" Rajan's hands trembled over his console. "Sir, it's locked onto something, a set of coordinates he swallowed. A place." The ship had been waiting for this moment, waiting to take humanity back to wherever it had once escaped to. Ren felt a deep, unsettling certainty. Beyond that rift was something we lost, a remnant of what we used to be, a place that had waited for us to return. And now, at the end of time itself, with the Veil closing in, we had to make a choice. The warship's engines roared to life, their deep hum resonating through the ancient hull like a heartbeat awakening after eons of silence. The rift, a swirling vortex of raw energy, stretched open before them, vast enough to swallow planets whole. And beyond it, the unknown. Captain Ren's pulse thundered in his ears. The Veil was closing in, screaming in the fabric of reality itself, desperate to stop them. It knew what lay on the other side of that gate, and it was afraid. Serac's fleet wavered in the distance, his ships caught between two choices: flee into the abyss or stand and die. Ren's comms crackled. Serac's voice was raw, stripped of arrogance. "Terran, if you go through that gate, you may never return." Ren's jaw clenched. "If we stay, we die." A long silence. Then Serac exhaled. "Then we go." His entire fleet turned, engines flaring, racing for the wormhole. The Jorvek Imperium, proud, ruthless conquerors, had chosen to follow humanity. And still the Veil came. The largest of the entities, a colossus, its shifting mass darker than the void itself, lunged toward them. "Warning, anomaly interference detected." Solus screamed. "Captain, the rift, it's destabilizing." The Veil was trying to shut it down. If it succeeded, they would be trapped. The warship's AI spoke again. Calm, absolute. "Wormhole stabilization required. Overcharge initiated." Rajan's console flared red. "Sir, it's going to self-destruct." Ren's breath caught. This ship, this city-sized relic of lost humanity, had one final mission. It was going to hold the line. One last time. The AI's voice resonated across the bridge. "Go." Ren made the call. "All ships, through the rift." The Vanguard's engine screamed, its thrusters igniting at full burn. The Jorvik fleet surged forward. One by one, they vanished into the vortex. And as the last ship crossed the threshold, the warship turned to face the veil. The Colossus reached for it, void tendrils stretching, grasping, and then light. Blinding, all-consuming, cataclysmic light. The warship detonated, its core unleashing the stored power of 1 billion lost years. The shockwave ripped through the void, tearing through the veil, scattering the darkness, burning it from existence. And then, nothing. The other side of the rift. For a long moment there was silence. Then the Vanguard emerged. Ren sucked in a sharp breath. His hands trembled. "Did we make it?" Solus, voice shaking, scanned the readouts. We're intact. The fleet made it." A pause, and then Rajan's voice, stunned. "Sir, look." The screen flickered, revealing what lay beyond the rift. A star system, massive, brilliant, untouched, and orbiting a golden world gleaming in the distant light. More warships, dozens, hundreds, thousands, silent, waiting, preserved in the void for an eternity, waiting for humanity to return. Solus whispered, voice filled with something close to awe. "We found them, the lost empire of mankind, and the war was not over. The day the sky burned red, the world changed forever." They came without warning, massive black ships blotting out the sun, their hulls gleaming like polished obsidian. The air crackled with strange energy as they descended, shaking the earth with their arrival. At first, the invaders didn't speak. They didn't announce their demands. They simply started killing. Cities crumbled under their weapons, tall buildings reduced to smoldering ruins, streets turned into rivers of fire. They weren't here to conquer. They weren't here to negotiate. They were here to exterminate, and that was their first mistake, because humans aren't the kind to go down quietly. It started with the military, of course. They threw everything they had at the invaders, tanks, jets, missiles, even nukes. And it worked for about 5 minutes. The enemy's technology was beyond anything Earth had ever seen. Their ships absorbed nuclear blasts like a warm summer breeze. Their soldiers, tall and reptilian, moved like ghosts, shrugging off bullets and tearing through soldiers like paper. Governments fell within days. Entire nations were wiped off the map. Humanity was losing. But we weren't beaten. Somewhere in the ruins of what used to be New York City, a small group of survivors huddled in the dark. The air smelled like smoke and death. Screams still echoed in the distance. Among them was a man named Connor Briggs, a former Marine. He had a busted rifle, a knife strapped to his leg, and an expression that suggested he had personally taken offense to the entire invasion. "They want to wipe us out?" Connor muttered, dragging a bloody hand through his hair. "Fine. Let's show them what a real extermination looks like." His words carried through the survivors like wildfire. Humans had always fought wars, against each other, against nature, against impossible odds. It was written into our bones, our very DNA. We were survivors, and if these aliens wanted a war, we would give them one. Word spread. Cities that had gone dark suddenly flickered back to life. People weren't just hiding anymore. They were hunting. Farmers turned their fields into traps. Gangs in the ruins of Los Angeles started stockpiling alien weapons, figuring out how to use them. Engineers in underground bunkers ripped apart captured tech, reverse engineering it with terrifying efficiency. And then, humanity did what humanity does best. We got nasty. Connor led one of the first successful strikes. His team, half-starved, exhausted, and armed with whatever they could find, ambushed an alien patrol in the dead of night. The fight lasted less than 5 minutes, but by the end of it, the aliens weren't just dead. They were torn apart. The news spread fast. Survivors started calling them Reapers, humans who didn't just fight back but made the enemy suffer. We learned. We adapted. We stole their weapons, their armor. We didn't fight fair, because fair fights were for idiots. We used everything: guerrilla tactics, poison, traps that would make medieval warlords proud. The aliens weren't prepared for that. In the beginning, they saw us as insects. Now they were starting to see us as something else, something worse. The first time a human strike force stormed an enemy base, they left a message behind, scrawled in blood. You wanted war? Congratulations. You just met humans. The invaders, once so confident, started making mistakes. Their patrols got jumpy. Their ships began retreating from certain areas, entire sections of Earth becoming no-go zones for them. They had the technology, they had the numbers, but they didn't have what we had, the will to win at any cost. And for the first time since their arrival, the aliens were afraid. The first real victory came in what used to be Chicago. The aliens had set up a massive command center there, using it as a hub to coordinate their extermination efforts. It was heavily fortified, guarded by an entire regiment of their elite soldiers. To them, it was untouchable. To us, it was a challenge. Connor and his team weren't the only ones planning an attack. Across the ruins, hundreds of survivors, former soldiers, gang members, mechanics, even kids who had lost everything, were waiting. Armed with stolen alien rifles, homemade explosives, and pure human rage, they struck in the dead of night. It started with fire. Using makeshift catapults, the resistance launched barrels of crude oil and gasoline into the alien compound. The flames spread fast, licking at their buildings, forcing them into the open. That's when the real attack began. From every shadow, from every broken building, humans emerged, screaming. Snipers picked off alien officers. Rockets slammed into their heavy artillery. Connor himself led the charge, cutting through their ranks with stolen plasma weapons. The aliens fought back hard. Their energy shields held for a while. Their weapons cut through dozens of resistance fighters. But humans didn't stop. Even when they were wounded, they crawled forward, still fighting, still biting, still killing. They weren't just up against soldiers. They were up against something feral, something angry. And then came the moment that changed everything. One of the engineers, some nerdy-looking kid named Malik, had figured out a weakness in the alien tech. Their power generators had a fail-safe to prevent overloading. If tampered with just right, they wouldn't just shut down. They'd explode. Connor got the call just as he put a knife through the throat of an alien officer. "We're about to light this place up," Malik panted through the radio. "You got 2 minutes to get clear, or you're going up with it." Connor wiped the blood off his face. 2 minutes? That was more than enough time. "Do it!" The explosion could be seen for miles. A massive, blinding ball of fire ripped through the alien stronghold, tearing their command center apart. The shockwave shattered what little glass remained in the ruined city, sending debris flying in every direction. Even from a distance, people could hear the alien screams. And then, silence. The battle was over. Chicago was ours. The victory sent a message, not just to the survivors, but to the invaders themselves. Humans weren't just resisting. We were winning. Reports started coming in from all over the world. Guerrilla forces were taking back cities. Resistance fighters were sabotaging alien supply lines. Scientists were breaking down their technology, turning their own weapons against them. The invaders had thought Earth would be an easy conquest. They had no idea what they had unleashed. And deep in their war councils, the alien commanders began to whisper in fear. Humans weren't prey, humans were predators, and now we were hunting them. The tide had turned. The aliens, once arrogant and unstoppable, were scrambling. Their sleek black warships no longer drifted lazily above cities, casting their oppressive shadows over terrified civilians. Now, they stayed on the move, afraid of becoming targets. Their ground forces, once marching through human streets like gods of war, were suddenly avoiding urban zones altogether. Because humans had adapted. Connor and his Reapers weren't just fighting battles anymore. They were waging psychological warfare. They left messages carved into alien armor, smeared in their own blue-black blood. We see you. Run while you can. This is our planet. It wasn't about just killing them anymore. It was about making them afraid, and it was working. Across the world, resistance cells were popping up like wildfire. In Siberia, nomadic hunters were taking down alien patrols with high-powered rifles, vanishing into the tundra before reinforcements could arrive. In Brazil, entire rainforest villages had gone dark, until an alien search party ventured too deep and was never seen again. Even the ruins of Europe, devastated in the first wave, had become a nightmare for the invaders. Humans were no longer fighting for survival. We were fighting for revenge. The first real proof that the aliens were breaking came when one of their warships, previously thought indestructible, was shot down. It happened over the remains of Berlin. A team of resistance fighters, using a hacked alien targeting system, turned their own planetary defense cannons against them. The ship, massive and armored, tried to evade, but the missiles struck true. The explosion was a thing of beauty. Flames, debris, and alien bodies raining from the sky. The ship didn't just crash, it sent a message. They could be beaten. They could be killed. Connor and his Reapers were moving through the Appalachian Mountains when the news came in. Their latest raid had been a brutal one, an ambush on an alien supply caravan that had left not a single survivor. The team was resting in an abandoned military bunker when the radio crackled to life. "You hearing this, Briggs?" came a voice from the other end, a resistance leader out of Canada. "They're pulling back. The bastards are actually retreating." Connor sat up, wiping sweat from his face. "What do you mean, retreating?" "I mean they're abandoning whole cities, pulling their troops back to their strongholds. They know they can't hold everything, so they're consolidating. Planning something." Connor exhaled. This was big. The aliens had come here with one purpose: to wipe humanity out. The fact that they were retreating meant they had underestimated just how nasty humans could get. But it also meant something else. Cornered animals were the most dangerous. 2 nights later, Connor got his answer. The Reapers were resting in the bunker when the sky turned white. A blast, brighter than the sun, erupted on the horizon. The ground shook, a deep, unnatural tremor. Every radio within 100 miles crackled to life with a single, horrific word. Cleansing. The aliens had changed their strategy. If they couldn't control Earth, they were going to burn it. The first city to fall was Beijing. The aliens hadn't just bombed it, they had erased it. One moment, the resistance forces there were pushing back, reclaiming their streets, winning. The next, the sky turned white, and everything, everyone was gone. Then Paris, then Cairo, then Sao Paulo. They weren't fighting anymore. They weren't trying to conquer or enslave. They were purging. The message was clear. If they couldn't have Earth, no one would. Connor watched the sky from the ruins of a farmhouse, his jaw clenched so tight it hurt. The distant glow of what had once been Atlanta was still burning on the horizon. The aliens had hit it just hours ago. There were no survivors. His Reapers stood behind him in silence. They had spent months clawing back what was theirs, proving humanity wasn't weak. And now, the bastards were taking the whole board off the table. Connor turned to his team. His voice was calm, steady, but behind his eyes, something cold and deadly was forming. "This changes nothing." They stared at him. Someone, a young woman named Riley, let out a bitter laugh. "Are you kidding? This changes everything." "No," Connor repeated, his voice sharper this time. "They want us to panic. They want us to scatter, to beg. But we're not giving them that. We didn't come this far just to let them burn everything down. We're gonna hit back, harder, smarter." He turned to Malik, the engineer who had helped take down Chicago. "Tell me we got something." Malik swallowed. "We do, sort of. We cracked some of their communications. Whatever this cleansing is, it's coming from orbit. Big-ass command ships, way up high. We can't touch them from the ground." Connor exhaled through his nose. "Then we go up." The group fell silent. That wasn't a joke. That wasn't bravado. He meant it. Riley crossed her arms. "And how the hell are we supposed to do that?" Connor grinned. It wasn't a friendly grin. It was the kind of grin you gave before you did something reckless, violent, and very human. "We steal a ship." The plan was suicidal. The aliens had fortified their planetary strongholds, massive bases where they stored weapons, armor, and, more importantly, their ships. If humans wanted a ride to orbit, they'd have to take one by force. And as it turned out, humans were really, really good at that. The attack happened at dawn. Connor's team, along with 3 other resistance groups, hit an alien stronghold near Houston. The facility was a fortress, walls of black metal, plasma turrets lining the perimeter, patrols moving in tight, controlled formations. They weren't prepared for what hit them. Explosions rocked the base as human forces swarmed from the ruins. Drones, built from scavenged parts, dove from the sky, slamming into enemy vehicles and detonating on impact. Snipers in the rubble picked off alien officers. Traps, simple, brutal, human traps, turned their own hallways into slaughterhouses. The aliens fought back, but it wasn't enough. They weren't just fighting soldiers, they were fighting monsters. The humans didn't stop. Even when injured, they kept coming. Even when outnumbered, they found ways to win. Because this was it. There was no surrender, no fallback. If they failed here, Earth was gone, and humans don't let go that easy. By the time Connor's team reached the docking bay, they had lost half their fighters, some vaporized by alien weapons, others torn apart in brutal close combat. But they had made it. And there it was, a sleek, obsidian-black starship pulsing with alien energy. It was designed for war, a command ship killer. Perfect! Malik sprinted ahead, hacking into the ship's systems, fingers flying over controls. Alarms blared. The remaining aliens were closing in. "Tell me you got it!" Connor shouted. Malik let out a breathless laugh. "Oh yeah, we got it!" The ship roared to life. Connor and the remaining survivors sprinted inside just as plasma fire rained down behind them. The doors sealed shut. The engines hummed. Then, with a force that shook the sky, humanity's first stolen warship lifted off. From orbit, the aliens saw the chaos below, their bases burning, their forces retreating. And now, one of their own warships, hijacked, rising toward them like a vengeful ghost. The High Command panicked. They had spent months underestimating humans. Now they realized the truth. They hadn't unleashed hell on Earth. They had unleashed humans, and we were coming for them. The alien fleet hovered above Earth like a storm of silent death. Their command ships, massive and ancient, had been untouchable for months. From their orbit, they had watched humanity burn, had chosen which cities to erase, had laughed at our resistance. But now, something was rising from the surface, something they did not expect. Inside the stolen warship, Connor and his team strapped in as Malik fought with the controls. The alien interface wasn't designed for human hands, but Malik was a genius. Sparks flew as he bypassed security protocols, overriding safeguards, forcing the ship to obey. Riley, checking the stolen weapons, glanced up. "How many ships we looking at?" Malik's eyes flicked to the scanner. 50, maybe 60. Connor let out a low whistle. "Good. I was worried we'd get bored." The others chuckled, because fear had left them. They had seen the worst. They had lost their families, their homes, their world. There was nothing left to be afraid of. Only the mission. Only revenge. The ship pierced the clouds. Up here the battle was different. Cold. Silent. The moment they breached orbit, alarms screamed. The alien fleet had noticed them, and the response was immediate. Missiles, fighters, energy lances. The stolen warship shuddered as explosions bloomed around them. Malik swore, hands flying across controls, dodging just enough to keep them alive. "Shields holding?" Connor asked, gripping his seat. Malik grinned through the chaos. "Not for long." Connor cracked his neck. "Then let's not waste time." He turned to the others. "We cut the head off. We end this." The command ship loomed ahead, a massive obsidian citadel floating in the void. That was the source of the cleansing, the place where the orders were given. It had to die. The warship's weapons were online. Plasma turrets roared to life, sending streams of deadly blue fire into the alien fleet. Fighters exploded, their sleek bodies torn apart. A capital ship took a direct hit and split in two, its pieces drifting into the darkness. The aliens panicked. They scrambled to understand how one of their own ships had turned against them. The confusion bought time. Malik pushed the engines to maximum. The ship screamed forward, closing the distance. The command ship opened fire. Direct hit. The ship lurched. Metal groaned, alarms wailed, the interior filled with smoke. "We're not gonna make it!" Malik shouted. Connor unstrapped, stood, grabbed his rifle. His eyes were locked on the view ahead. "Yes, we are." The ship crashed straight into the enemy's hangar. The impact threw them all forward. Fires erupted around them, hull plating buckled. But they were inside the heart of the beast. And they were still alive. Connor was the first out. The moment the doors hissed open, they were in motion. No cover, no retreat, just war. The alien soldiers weren't ready for them. They had expected to fight a species on its knees. Instead, they faced demons, humans with nothing to lose. The Reapers tore through them, plasma rifles barked, knives flashed, blood, their blood, painted the floors. Connor didn't stop moving, didn't stop killing, not until they reached the bridge. The doors were sealed, reinforced, impossible to break. Connor turned to Malik. "Blow it!" Malik slapped a charge onto the frame, stepped back. Boom! The doors flew apart. Inside, the alien high command stood frozen, tall, regal, their arrogance stripped away, and behind them, the control panel for the cleansing. Connor raised his weapon. "No more." He pulled the trigger. The high command fell. The Reapers stormed forward. Riley reached the console first, her fingers hesitating for just a second. Then she pressed the button. The cleansing stopped. Across Earth, the remaining cities stayed whole. No more death beams. No more instant destruction. Humanity had won, but Connor wasn't done. He activated his radio, speaking to every resistance fighter still alive. "They tried to wipe us out. Now we wipe them out." The message was clear. The war wasn't over. Not until every last one of these monsters was gone. Not until Earth was ours again. The Reapers turned to the ship's controls. The alien fleet was still out there, still waiting. Connor looked at his people. "Let's finish this." The stolen warship turned toward the enemy, and humanity went to war. The war had changed. Before, humanity had fought like rats in the ruins, scavenging, hiding, striking from the shadows. But now? Now we had their ships, their weapons, their fear. The message had gone out across the world. The cleansing was over. The counterattack had begun. And for the first time since the invasion began, we weren't the ones running. Connor sat in the warship's command chair, his fingers drumming against the armrest. The bridge was still slick with alien blood. The bodies of their fallen commanders slumped against the walls. The Reapers moved around him, stripping the consoles, hacking into alien communications, turning their enemy's own network against them. Riley walked up beside him, a stolen plasma rifle slung over her shoulder. "So, boss," she said, her tone half serious. "What's next?" Connor leaned forward, watching the alien fleet shift in the distance. They were regrouping, adjusting to the fact that one of their own ships had just turned into a goddamn Reaper. "We take the fight to them," he said. Riley smirked. "I was hoping you'd say that." The next few hours were chaos. Malik and the engineers worked on keeping the ship operational. The impact from their glorious entrance had nearly wrecked the main thrusters, but humans were nothing if not persistent. They had it patched up enough to move. Not fast, but enough to kill. Connor and Riley went through the alien systems, pulling every bit of intelligence they could. And that's when they found it, the source. The aliens hadn't just come here on a whim. They had a war machine, a massive construct floating beyond Earth's orbit, a command nexus, the true heart of their fleet. It was where their leaders coordinated the war, where their fleets were resupplied, where they controlled the flow of destruction. If Earth had any hope of surviving, that station had to burn. Connor stared at the screen, his jaw tightening. "That's the heart of the beast." Riley crossed her arms. "And we're gonna rip it out." The Reapers weren't alone. As soon as word spread that a human-controlled warship was flying through enemy space, the resistance rose like fire. From the ruins of Moscow, stolen alien tanks rolled onto the battlefield. In the jungles of South America, guerrilla fighters used captured weapons to ambush supply lines. From underground bunkers in Australia, scavenged missile silos launched payloads into the sky, hitting ships that had once been untouchable. The aliens panicked. They had underestimated us. Again. And that distraction gave Connor's crew the opening they needed. The warship roared through the void, dodging alien patrols as it approached the command nexus. The station was massive, a floating black fortress covered in spines, turrets, and docking bays large enough to house entire fleets. It was a death trap, and we were flying straight into it. The moment we breached their defenses, everything went to hell. Alarms screamed, fighters scrambled, plasma fire rained down from the station's defenses. But Malik was a damn magician. The stolen ship twisted, dodged, fired back. Alien vessels exploded in blinding flashes of blue and white. Debris scattered across the void. But we weren't here for a battle. We were here to end the war. Connor and the strike team breached the station. They moved fast, cutting through corridors filled with confused alien officers. Plasma bolts tore through them before they could even react. The objective was clear. Reach the central core. It was deep inside, heavily guarded. The place where the entire invasion was coordinated. The place where the orders had been given to burn Earth. The place that needed to die. Fighting through the corridors was brutal. The aliens, realizing what was at stake, threw everything they had at them. Blades flashed. Plasma fire lit up the darkness. The air stank of burnt flesh and blood. But Connor and his people didn't stop. They tore through everything in their way, moving deeper, closer. Until finally, they reached it. The command core. And the last of the alien High Lords were waiting. The chamber was massive, filled with alien technology pulsing like a living heart. In the center, a holographic display showed the entire war network, lines of data connecting ships, troops, everything. And standing before it, the last of their leaders, tall, regal, afraid. One of them, a towering figure clad in dark robes, stepped forward, his voice rasping. "Human," he growled. "Do you think you have won?" Connor raised his rifle. "No." Then he pulled the trigger. The battle exploded. The last of the High Lords fought like cornered beasts. Their weapons cut through steel, their strength unnatural, their screams pure hatred. But they weren't fighting humans. They were fighting demons, survivors of the end of the world. And one by one, they fell. The core controls were within reach. Malik, bleeding but grinning, staggered toward them. "You ready to turn this whole thing inside out?" Connor stepped forward, looked down at the interface. One button, one command. Wipe the fleet. Wipe the invasion. End the war. Connor exhaled. Then he pressed it. The station began to die. Fire ripped through the corridors. Systems failed. The alien network collapsed. Across the battlefield, the enemy fleet lost control. Ships drifted. Weapons stopped firing. Fighters spun out of control, colliding with their own capital ships. The entire war machine collapsed in seconds. Humanity had severed the head. Now it was time to burn the body. Connor turned to his team. "Time to go." They ran, weaving through the burning station as explosions tore through its spine. The stolen warship hovered just outside, waiting. They barely made it. The moment they were on board, Malik punched the engines. The ship rocketed away. Behind them, the command nexus imploded. A brilliant explosion tore through the void, a shockwave of flame and debris spreading across the stars. And just like that, the invasion was over. Earth was in ruins. The war had cost billions of lives. Cities had been lost, families shattered. But we had won. Humanity didn't just survive. We conquered. Connor watched the burning sky from the warship's bridge. Riley stood beside him, arms crossed. "So," she said, "what now?" Connor smirked. "Now? We make sure this never happens again." Riley arched a brow. "And how do we do that?" Connor's eyes gleamed as he looked toward the alien homeworld, still waiting beyond the stars. "We take the war to them. We hunt. We finish what they started." Humanity had survived extinction. Now it was our turn to be the monsters. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning.